What you got, brother?
Oh man, nothing much, man. Just we have like three good questions where we could break down if you want to start from there.
Oh shit. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Did you have another life?
Well, I still had those questions. Remember, I had so many, so I had
Oh
to do
yeah, yeah,
another
yeah.
like.
100%. Yeah, yeah. You know what's funny, bro? It doesn't it doesn't matter what the question is or when it was asked, because that same question is always going to be asked again by someone else.
Absolutely, yeah,
You
straight.
know what I mean? So these questions help us just get it going
Yeah.
because someone might say, "Oh, that's an old question." No, it ain't no old question. Someone else is going to ask it.
Oh, absolutely. Never
Hmm.
too old because that problem somebody's gonna have it, and then the person that already found the solution is gonna be able to help you out on that. So yeah, those questions that I hear them all the time because when we have our calls or Zoom calls with all the team members, it's like repetitive, and it's just
That's
reminding
right.
you guys like you guys are getting
Yeah.
through this, you guys are gonna face this, you guys are gonna experience this, and that's why we get so good at answering because we already been there. We already heard that question, so we have the solution for that question.
You know what another good point is too. That's why group coaching is extremely valuable. A lot of times people think, "Well, I'm coming into the group late." Bro, you ain't late, you're just on time.
Hmm.
Because trust me, all the questions that you have, all the questions that you're going to ask, either somebody wants to hear it again and hear an answer, or there's someone else on the group that's new too that's hearing it for the first time.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we do, like in personal development, you have to keep revisiting the same questions and basics anyway,
Hmm. Hmm.
because you have to keep strengthening the information behind them so that it gets instilled into somebody permanently. Okay. See, a lot of times what happens is somebody, like let's say somebody learns something, whether because they asked a question or just because they heard it at random. It sounds good at the moment and it's making sense. It starts connecting dots in their head at that moment, but then they forget it a couple of weeks later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. When we get information, we're supposed to write that shit down and revisit it over and over and over so we can incorporate it into our everyday thinking,
Yep.
you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's one of the key points of like when you go to like seminars or masterminds or any event. People they're like, "Well, where's your note and pad?" Like you're not gonna remember all this shit by the time you're gonna be feel and motivated in the moment, but once you exit that door, you're like, "I heard a lot of gems," and your mind
Yeah,
is like very limitless because you haven't exercised that you're not gonna remember all that shit. You forget.
absolutely.
The next
Yeah.
day you're like, fuck, I should have wrote this or what did he say? It always happens.
Or
Crazy.
they went to the training of the seminar for the selfie. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Oh man. Oh man. Unprepared.
I'm
Unprepared.
prepared.
Yep. But nah man, wanna kick it off then? You
Let's
know?
kick it off. Yeah, yeah.
Well, guys, we're gonna kick it off. We have a few questions for the Q&A. Me and my boy Emilio, one of the best in personal development coaches out there. We're gonna break it down so you guys could understand more of how to
Thanks, brother.
deal with these situations. But first question here that I had from one of the guys also can just be stuck in the same route. Okay. Damn, I think we went to the where's that one that I just took? Okay, here we go. Sorry about that.
All right.
This guy, he's struggling with staying focused. And I
Mm.
remember that you had just talked about that when we were on the group call, and that was something that, it was at a perfect timing because nobody focus on what you really want, right? That's one of the
Yeah.
main problems that everybody has. They cannot focus. Okay, you're handed a blueprint or you hear something, but you cannot just focus on what to do. It's like I said and what you said, it's because you don't know really what you want, you don't
A-
have
a- Absolutely. No, no. I, and the person asking that question, I like to be very honest about myself too. Even there are still times where I find myself not focusing, not being able to focus. Okay. Now, the only thing that's different is once I realize I'm not focusing, or I'm not focused, I know exactly what it is that I need to do to stay focused. So let's talk around that. First of all, you need to understand like a universal law or a universal principle. And basically what it says is that energy flows where attention goes. Now it may sound kind of, a little too easy, or a little weird,
Yeah.
but if you really break it down, energy flows where attention goes. So if I break it down or add to it, whatever it is that we focus on, or whatever it is that we're giving our attention to, is what we're giving energy to, and that's what we're going to end up manifesting in our life. That's what we're going to end up creating in our life. And so I think me and you talked about it the other day, is if you don't want to create it, then don't give any energy to it, right?
Yep.
And so knowing that universal law, then you also have to, exactly what Guerrero just said, it's extremely important. It's vitally important that you become very specific about what it is that you want. Okay, whatever it is, whether it's, to weigh a certain weight, or to look a certain way, whether it's to make a certain amount of money, or have your relationship be a certain way, or have a certain career. I can keep going on and on. A certain home, whatever it may be. Most people never give themselves permission to be specific about what it is that they want. And there's an old story that my mentor shared with me, and I know I shared it with you before too, Guerrero, where this guy was, it's a story. This guy was praying and praying to God that he wanted more money. He
Mhm.
said, God, I want more money, I want more money, I want more money. And the next morning when he woke up, he walked outside, he found $1 in the street. And when he got that dollar, God told him, well, there you go. Make sure you got more money. And the
Mhm.
guy was upset. He was pissed off. And the guy was like, God, no, that's $1. And God told him, you didn't tell me how much more money you wanted.
Yeah.
You just said you wanted more money. And so the reason why we tell that story is we want you to understand how vitally important it is to be specific about what it is that you want. Okay. If you want a new car, well, what type of car you want? Do you want? What year, what color, right? What color is the interior? What type of engine does it have? Like, when it comes to our life, you have to be extremely specific about what it is that you want. Number one rule, why? So you know exactly what to focus on.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, once you know specifically what it is that you want, now you know what it is that you need to focus on. Why? Because energy flows where energy goes. I'm sorry. Energy flows where attention goes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is the thing. Habit. By habit, we tend to focus on all the other things that we do not want. Okay. We focus on, man, my wife just said something horrible to me, or she didn't say thank you for this, or my wife's upset at me right now. So I'm thinking about all of that. I got into it with my boss today, or somebody flipped me off on the freeway when I was driving over here, or you know what, man, my cousin still owes me that money, and he's dodging my calls right now. I'm just throwing things out there, right?
Yeah.
So things in life happen. There's going to be some things in life that happen that you do not like, but that doesn't mean that you have to concentrate on them or focus on them.
Hmm. Hmm.
If you follow the universal law and the universal principle, energy flows where attention goes. And whatever it is that I focus on, or put my energy towards, that's what I'm going to create in my life. So, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give myself permission. I'm going to write down what it is that I want my life to be, what I want it to look like, what is it that I want to have, what is it that I want to achieve. And you know what? Regardless of what's going on around me, I'm going to focus on what it is that I want,
Hmm. Hmm.
because I know that according to universal law, universal principle, whatever it is that I focus on is what I'm going to create and manifest.
Hmm.
Yes, I'm not too happy with what happened here. Yes, I'm not too happy with what happened here, but I don't want to create more of that. So there's no need for me to focus on it.
But you have to
And
believe
the
that deeply, Emilio. Sorry to interrupt because
no, tell me, no, no, it's good.
you have to believe that deeply. Why? Because it's easy to get distracted, man. Easy.
Hmm.
And even sometimes us that, and we have these tools and the resources, but it kind
Yeah,
of throws us off our game. We could be like being high, and as soon as your lady throws you a curveball, or she's pissed off and she throws you off game. Now your energy take a deep, a deep in the and take a dive, and throw you off
yeah,
a game, where you were like, oh man, I was vibing high, and then all of a sudden, boom, you crash. Like it's like they have to be like a strong believer, have mental toughness where you do not let nothing like distract you or derail you, because it's very easy,
yeah,
and throughout the journey, throughout the process, there's all kinds of tests coming your way, all kinds of adversity and shit that it's out of your control, but then we kind of lose focus. There we go, lose focus, and then boom,
yeah,
fucking throws us off our game, and then we kind of like veer away from like what we gotta like focus on, and
yeah.
sometimes you tend to take a few steps back until you like regroup, but by then it's almost like a habit that you're creating all the time, you know?
So no, 100%. So if everyone looks at it like this, look at it as like for the people who are really tracking their macros and working out, right? Especially to cut weight, right? You have to eat a certain amount of protein,
Hmm.
a certain amount of fat,
Hmm.
and a certain amount of carbs each day under a certain calorie count.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Hmm.
Okay. And you have to stick to that every day. And the reason why is because it's a science. As you know, if you stick to that, weight's going to drop.
Hmm.
You're going to build more muscle if you're working out,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Yep.
Look at that as the same thing as focusing on what it is that you want. Because if you stick to the proper macro count,
Hmm.
and if you're sticking to the proper calories and that you're taking in, you know by science, sooner or later. I mean, look at all your
Yep.
testimonials.
Yep.
Okay, that's proof in the pudding, right? All those people, not only did they work out every day, they tracked their macros and they kept it under a certain caloric count. And within time, not only did the weight drop, but then the muscles started to show themselves, started to reveal themselves
Yes.
because the weight dropped, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And if I didn't explain that correctly, just let me know. Right?
No,
So,
that's fucking fuck, man. It can't get
okay.
any better. Wow, that's
Okay.
straight up. It's like the
Okay.
same thing, the same
Yes.
thing. These guys that got the results because they were so focused and
Yeah.
relentless, and they choose to like just not like block all the noise out there and just stick to the plan.
Absolutely. I love I love cinnamon rolls. Okay. I love cinnamon rolls, bro. I can't go to the mall because if I walk past Cinnabon, I can smell that shit. And I love that smell. Okay. So if you're tracking macros and you're keeping your total caloric intake under a certain amount of calories a day, let's say you're keeping it at 1750 or 1800, whatever. Okay. I know if I eat that cinnamon roll, that's 900 calories just in that one cinnamon roll.
Hmm.
And a majority of that calories is not coming from carbs or sugar. It's coming from all the fat, all the butter that's in that thing.
Yep.
Okay, so now not only did I go over my caloric count if I eat it, I'm also going over my fat macros,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
Instead of keeping my fat around 40, grams a day, that's going to jump it up to about 200 grams for the day.
Easy.
Okay,
Easy.
easy, right? Easy. Now, i- if you compare it to what we were just talking about, when every time that you don't focus on what it is that you want, imagine that's the same thing as eating a fucking cinnamon roll when
Hmm.
you're trying to track your macros and keep your calorie count.
Hmm.
Every time you eat that cinnamon roll, you're gonna throw your game off and you're gonna have to start all over.
Hmm.
When you're supposed to focus on what it is that you want to create that, any time that you allow your mind to drift, and to start concentrating and focusing on all the shit that's going wrong or that you don't like or that's or it could be even something that you shouldn't be focused on like maybe you're at let's say you're married and you have a family and you're supposed to be taking care of that family, and all of a sudden some girl at work is smiling at you trying to get your number.
Yeah.
That could be the same thing as throwing you off of your game, right?
Hmm.
Hey, look, those of us who've been married for a long time and know how this works, hey, you could get out there and go fuck around and cheat on your wife, and you may not get caught. Everything might be all right at that moment. But sooner or later, what happens if you do get caught? That's going to throw off your whole game all over again,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So anytime that we don't focus on what it is that we want, we're giving energy to those things and we're opening the door to create what it is that we do not want because we're not focusing on what it is that we do. And so you have to, like Guerrero said, you have to understand this at a very, very deep level. And you have to understand this as a universal law, universal law, just like gravity. If you jump off of a roof, you're going to come crashing down. If you jump off a roof 10 different times, on the ninth time, you're not going to float and just fly around for a little bit. No, the law of gravity is going to bring you down again. Well, this universal law, what we're talking about as energy flows, where attention goes, it works 100% of the time as well, just like the universal law of gravity. So, as you understand this law and you understand this principle, now you have a much deeper awareness to say, fuck, the reason why I haven't been able to create what it is that I want because I haven't been focusing on it. I'm
Hmm.
focusing on all this other shit. And then now I look at my life. Now I'm not surprised why I created and manifested all this shit that I don't like. If you're afraid of something and all you're focusing on is the fear, then all you're going to do is create more things to be afraid about in your life. Okay? So when you're focusing on when you're trying to stay focused, always remember that story. All you're doing is tracking your macros. That's all you're doing. You're tracking the calories that your intake. And if you allow something to come into your body, just like if you allow an unwanted thought to come into your mind, guess what? You're throwing your whole game off again. You got to start all over.
Damn. Well,
It may it may even set you back. If you, if you eat a cinnamon roll 3 days in a row when you're trying to track your macros, bro, you set yourself back at least a couple weeks.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Easy. Easy.
Easy, because now you got to go into a mean caloric deficit,
Yep.
and you better go burn that shit off, right? And
Yep.
in order to just to play catch up, just
Yep.
to play catch up to where you were. Well, the same thing about here. I want to ask. We need to each and every one of us need to ask ourselves how much time a day do we actually spend thinking about the things that we really want compared to thinking about all the shit that's going wrong, to, compared to thinking about all the shit that we don't want. I guarantee you, an overwhelming majority of people, they're too busy thinking about all the shit they're angry about, they're sad about, they're guilty about, what they're afraid of. They're thinking about how they're going to do this or do. And then, according to universal law, all that we're doing is just continuing to create more and more things that we do not want in our life. And then, guess what? Here goes that word depression again,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
right?
Yep. All these emotions.
Hopefully that made sense, bro.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely, man. Way to break it down, man. Absolutely. Straight up.
Mhm.
Couldn't even break it down any better than that because especially, comparing it to macros. That's why these guys, the more detail you are on what you're doing, the better results you get. And that's what I tell them. It's like
Yep.
success is in the details. So if
It's
there's
success is in the details.
yep, and same thing. If you stay focused on exactly what you and these guys that get crazy transformations, they
Yeah.
lay up to the gram. They're very like
100%.
like
Yep.
very anal with everything. I mean, do you really have to go to the extreme? No, but I mean, I'm not gonna stop them. I'm like, hey, that's the way you want to be, and these guys are like, just
Well, to be honest with you, I'm still doing it. I'm still doing it. Instead of a cup of rice, I'm doing a half a cup. And then I'm tracking to the gram. Okay, how many grams of carbs? How many grams of fat is it? How many calories is this? And I'm writing it down, doing the math because I know if I allow it to go over, it may not be that big of a deal, but what if I allow it to go over for the next 10 days every day?
Yeah, it adds up.
It
Adds
adds
up.
up. You understand what I mean? So,
Yep. Same thing with what you said. Yep. Same
yeah,
thing with
so
that's
same thing with
powerful,
the way you're thinking. Yeah, 100%.
man. There you go for that guy. That's a good answer for someone out there that having a hard time staying focused. You know,
Hmm.
just like my boy said, energy goes where attention goes, right?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. And guess what? Just like that person you said who's tracking every single gram. And you know what though? That person, for being that anal about it, it's a guarantee that they're going to reach their ideal body weight. It's a guarantee that they're going to reach the ideal physique of what they're looking to reach. It's a guarantee because mathematically they're going to continue to follow that shit.
mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, guess what? Why wouldn't you utilize that same mathematics to create other things that you want?
Crazy.
Okay, if I know energy flows where attention goes, then I'm gonna make sure that I focus my attention on what it is that I want instead of focusing on anything that I don't want. We'll
Mm.
leave that one there, I guess, you know?
Yep. Absolutely. Powerful. Powerful.